Yeah. Okay. All right, good evening. I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for coming out tonight. I would like to introduce you now to Deborah Johnson, wherever you are. That's my adult services coordinator who made this possible. I would also like to thank Angela Lucheski for coming tonight. She's our adult services program services director. Let me get it right. And I would also like to tell you that this coming Saturday at R.T. Jones, there will be a program. It's an author read by Richard Judy, who will be presenting his Appalachian Trail fiction book. And that's at 2 o'clock this Saturday at R.T. Jones. And now, I would really like to thank Heather Dobson. She's the charter member and communications director of Paranormal Georgia Investigations. And this is her truth. The Paranormal 101 presentation is everything you wanted to know about investigating the paranormal, but we're afraid to ask. They'll tell you all about the equipment they use, how they use it, and why they do what they do when they investigate haunted locations. They'll be showing you some of the best evidence of the paranormal and answer any questions you may have. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Heather, and thank you all. Yeah, nothing more from the door.
We'll let them get the program.
And there's some more snacks there.
A couple more people coming in. She brought it with her. Well, she did make them with different. She should.
Well, as she said, my name is Heather Dobson, and I'm down here on the list. I'm the communications director for PGI, and I'm one of the founding members. And I'm going to let the others in my group who are here this evening introduce themselves while I run the slideshow here from the middle. So, go for it.
Good evening. My name is Clint Brownlee. I'm the director of Paranormal Georgia Investigations. I've been an investigator about 8.5 years now. And that whole time I've been with Jordan and Heather as investigators. And I'm going to turn it over to Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan Duncan. I'm the assistant director here. I mainly help Clint out, back him up a lot in certain executive decisions that need to be made within the group. As he said, Clint and Heather and I have been investigating for about 8.5 years. We started out, we did our very first investigation together in January of 2008. So now we're here, and take it. This guy.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Nichols. I'm the tech manager of PGI. Basically, my responsibilities, I take care of a lot of our equipment, especially the video equipment and all that kind of stuff. I prepare our video, gets sent out, so everybody can watch it and handle it and deal with all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm Christina Kieffer. I'm the Chief Science Officer. I have a master's in biology, and I like to use my background in my sciences and apply it, especially my paranormal research. And I didn't start this group. I started like 7 years ago with a different group, and I found these little group of folks later on.
Upgrade.
Yeah, that's right.
Alright, so that's you.
Well, basically, PGI was formed in July 2009 after Clint, Jordan, and myself investigating with another group. We really didn't like how they ran their investigations or a lot of their policies, and we decided we felt like we wanted to do it what we felt was the right way, the more scientific way, and be more in it to help people rather than helping ourselves. We do cover all of Atlanta, the Atlanta suburbs, and North Georgia. We do go to the South Georgia areas if needed. If someone calls us and they're absolutely desperate, we will travel to their location in South Georgia. And we do have connections with other groups throughout the Southeast that we trust, that we've worked with in the past, that we've talked to, that we can refer clients to. The three of us have been together for 8 years. We've got a combined total experience of 24 years investigating, and we really pride ourselves on our professionalism and making sure that we take care of our clients, because that is why we're doing this. We're not doing this for fame, fortune, for glory. We're doing this because we all had questions about the paranormal before we got into this, and now we want to help others with those questions as well. And again, our goal is to help clients. We found through investigating that, interestingly enough, investigating the paranormal is more about the living than the dead. Because a lot of times it's about calming clients down. Because what all we see is in Hollywood and on TV. And the bad stuff, the scary stuff is what sells tickets and makes ratings. But that's not what we see in our day-to-day investigating of homes and businesses. And so a lot of it is calming people down and making them understand that the paranormal is more normal and not out of the normal.
Just out of curiosity, show of hands, how many people have seen like the ghost television shows or have watched them with a regular basis? Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the times, I'm sorry, jump in. What you don't see is the production side. When you see the weekly hour show, and Ghost Hunters, for example, they do 2 locations an episode, so you get 30 minutes at each location. That's really like 4 days filming in one location, edited down to 30 minutes. So you actually get to see a lot of, or you don't get to see a lot of the hurry up and wait of paranormal investigating.
Exactly. And we don't have inside knowledge, but again, a lot of places that we investigate, we don't get evidence. We don't have anything to present to the client when it's all over. But if you notice, the paranormal shows always have something. So I'm not saying with 100% certainty that they fake evidence, but I find it interesting that every episode has evidence. So that's all I'm saying.
Considering that first handful of episodes, they were doing more debunking claims than confirming claims.
And there have been some shows that have been outed as faking evidence too.
And our goal is to go into a client's home and say, it's squirrels, it's bad wiring, it's, the teenager getting on the computer and not telling you. That's the kind of thing, it's not abnormal, it's something normal. So that's what we're trying to do. That's our main goal, is to be able to tell people that's not what's happening. But if it is paranormal, if all we can say is that it's something that is paranormal in nature, again, we try to tell people you're not crazy, you're not imagining things, because we've all had experiences like that. And you need to calm down and not think you're just out of your mind. So it's all good. All right.
Okay, so this is the paranormal data collected. This is something that we started a little bit over a year ago. And the whole point of it is to start collecting more data in the paranormal field. The reason for this is more data we collect, the more answers we can start getting. For instance, like we'll go into a home and we'll collect all this data before we even start an investigation. If we start doing that every investigation, we start seeing trends in some of the places we go into. And this data collected, it's kind of trying to also get other paranormal groups together and start working together. I mean, there's groups out there like, okay, you're doing investigations, you're just trying to get evidence. Why not at the same time you go out there, you start collecting some of this data? And, even if you're not going to put the effort into analyzing it and trying to come up with conclusions, give it to another group so that they can look at it. Like, for instance, let's say if we're going to do investigation at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital. Well, we can call up people on this data collecting like, hey, what kind of evidence you got from your investigations there? What data did you collect? Did you happen to find more EVPs during, a full moon? Stuff like that. And that's the whole point, is just to get the field to move forward. And right now we're in such a baby stage, if you want to call it, in terms of, it's the science field. A lot of scientists out there will look at the paranormal and be like, that's fake science, fringe science, pseudoscience. Well, it's because we're not analyzing the data, we're not collecting it properly. And so that's the whole point of this. And you can find more about this on our website too. It gets into a little bit more detail on our website. So, just general, there are the two most common types of hauntings are intelligent and residual. In intelligent hauntings, that's when the spirits, whatever they are, that are in the home or location, can actually interact with the living people that are there. They can answer questions that are intelligent, like what's your name? And they answer right back to you. That's an example. And our other type is residual, and that's almost like a record player. Like, let's say the individual lived in that home for 20 years and they died. And for me, I believe that individual is still, it's a spirit that's, well, I'm just going to keep going on with my life. They don't realize that they're actually dead. They just keep going the day-to-day activities that they used to go through in their real life. And the least common ones, and you hardly will ever find these, but they do occur, are poltergeists and inhuman. Poltergeists, that's when things are moving, when things are levitating, whether it can be anything small from like a candle to something large like a couch, very rare. And those inhuman hauntings, those are going to be where you get your demons, devils, even angels, jinns, all that kind of stuff is going to fall in your inhuman. And that's what it sounds, it's these entities were never human before.
And as, again, I've been doing this for about 8.5 years. I've never once come across any of these. We see these a little bit more often, but the most often is that we debunk a lot of stuff. And we disprove a lot.
A lot of times when you come in contact with inhuman, you know right off the bat it's inhuman, because it's going to be very negative.
And that would be a situation for at least us as a paranormal group. If we ever encounter anything that would be considered, or we would consider to be inhuman, if that ever did happen, we are the type that we are scientific, trying to actually just collect the evidence, put your mind at ease, and help you move along. So that would be a situation where we're not capable of handling that, but we can refer you to somebody that can handle that. So we don't do cleansing or anything like that.
We're not Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
We just find them, and then we find somebody to help you get rid of them if that's what you want.
With as much as we all love that movie.
None of us have unlicensed nuclear tools.
Well, you don't.
Well,
So going back to all the data that we collect, this is a list of what we do at every investigation. When we go to home, business, whatever, we're going to look first at the weather, what's going on. Is it raining? Is it thunderstorm? Is it snowing? We're also going to look at moon phase, full moon, new moon, solar activity. Has anything solar activity occurred during that day or maybe the day before? Geomagnetic field activity, any like seismic activity, earthquakes. Also geologic formations. We'll find the exact point. Okay, what kind of rock is your house, business, whatever is sitting on?
and I would like to interject right here. This is my biggest pet peeve, and I know you guys raised your hands when you said you watch paranormal shows. Limestone does not feed a haunting. It's not limestone. Limestone used to be coral and living organisms. You're looking for quartz and quartz type materials like quartzite, myelinite, gneiss, and granite. So the next time Jason Hawes on Ghost Hunters says, "Oh, this is sitting on limestone, it's contributing to the haunting," he has no idea what he's talking about. The thing of it is that honestly, for the quartz deposit under your house to contribute to your haunting, your house would probably have to be as tall as the Taipei 101 tower, exerting incredible amounts of pressure on the ground underneath while there's probably earthquakes going on. But we're still collecting this data to see trends, if there are any.
And also, going to locations of rivers, railroads, ley lines. One thing with the rivers, people don't understand that there's locations where a river or a stream might be, and there's a large amount of pollution in that area. Like with my science background, I've actually done this where there's a meter you can stick in the water, and it measures the amount of conductivity in that water, and that will lead you to an increased level of pollution. So if you've got a lot of pollution in a river and the conductivity is higher, that can potentially add to that activity in the home.
Go ahead.
With all this stuff, hopefully soon we'll be able to show, okay, well, increased, thunderstorms does add to paranormal activity, maybe moon phase, all this kind of stuff we're trying to get answers for.
Just kind of further, the reason why we collect information to rivers or railroad tracks. There's a leading theory in the paranormal community that a ghost or spirit or entity, whatever you want to call it, is made of energy. And it needs energy to manifest itself if it's an intelligent haunting. The reason why rivers and railroads are so important is because water is constantly flowing and producing energy. Railroads go by quite often and produce a lot of movement energy. So that's a lot of the reasons why we look at those. Like, I didn't know if that was confusing.
What are ley lines?
Certain religions and belief systems believe in kind of natural energy, like natural energy lines that flow across the earth. Think of it kind of as a chi in Eastern philosophy. And so it would just be the energy of the earth in certain places that flows. So you think of, like a lot of people think of Sedona, Arizona as being a very spiritual place, and it lies at the intersection of multiple ley lines at a Indian Mountains, another similar spot that was chosen by Native Americans for those reasons.
Thank you. This is me.
Yes, yes.
All right, so now we're going to get into the equipment that we use. We pretty much use everything that you might see on television. Of course, we don't have the gigantic budgets that Zach Bagans and his guys have, and everything that we have purchased ourselves under our own dime and, build our equipment case. But we pretty much use EMF meters, and EMF stands for electromagnetic field meters. And those are things that you'll see electricians use. So those aren't anything out of the normal. A K2 meter, again, it's like an EMF meter. It's the exact same thing. The only difference is that instead of a digital number readout, it's showing lights. You've probably seen those on the paranormal shows. It's like green, yellow, orange, red lights. And that gives us a good visual with sitting across the room rather than right in front. The digital readout, you've got to be right on top of it. Whereas that's across the room, we can see the lights changing. We know there's a fluctuation in the electromagnetic field, and I'll get onto that in just a minute. The REM pod, REM stands for remote electromagnetic. We have one of those here that we can demonstrate. A REM pod is essentially a pod with an antenna, and it's emitting an electromagnetic field around the antenna. And if anything disturbs that field, it makes noise. So again, this is something remotely that can be in another part of the home or business where we're investigating, and if we hear it go off, it's like a silent investigator that just sits and waits.
Side note, my cats freak out.
So that allows us to use that remotely. We also have a vibration pod, and what that's tracking is vibrations. If, a homeowner tells us somebody walks up and down the hall every night, I hear footsteps. It's going to beep, and the lights are going to go off. So yet again, that's just something that we can remotely use to prove that there's movement happening. We can also put it on tables. Oh, objects are moving on the tables. Okay, we'll stick it on the table and see if anything tries to move it or if something touches the table. And they're pretty sensitive, but at the same time, if you set it on a table and just walk by, they don't go off. You've really got to, touch the table and move that around to affect it. Our voice recorders, simple voice recorders that you can buy at Best Buy, just digital voice recorders by Sony, and $50, $60. They're not anything crazy expensive. And I am of the opinion that the bigger the microphones, the more ambient noise you're going to pick up, and that's not a good thing, because you can listen to a dryer and imagine voices. So if there's too much ambient noise, that's not always a good thing. You can hear too much. So you just want a basic, simple digital voice recorder. IR video cameras, infrared, that's so that we can see in the dark. Why do we always investigate at night? Well, we don't always investigate at night. If the client says most of the activity happens at 2 in the afternoon, we try our best to get there when the activity peaks. But most of the time, the activity peaks at night for people, because let's think about this. We're moving through the house, we're making noise, we're going about our lives, and your house is quiet when you're in bed. So usually, that's when people notice paranormal activity. So that's why we typically investigate at night, thus we need the IR cameras to see at night. ambient air thermometer, a prevailing theory, one of the ideas of paranormal spirits manifesting, that not only will they affect the electromagnetic field, they'll cause a drop or a rise in temperature. So we have thermometers to determine, is temperature going up or is temperature going down? Still cameras will take baseline pictures of a location. Okay, yep, the doily was right there, and the chair's there, and the candlestick's there. And that way, as we're going on our investigation, we'll take pictures, and if anything moves, if we see anything out of the ordinary, we can make note of it and use it as evidence for the client. And again, flashlights, because nobody wants to stumble around in the dark. Now, why is it important to measure electromagnetic fields? This is probably one of the few things that we can look at as paranormal investigators and immediately tell a client, okay, what's going on here is appliances or wiring or that kind of thing. So EMF stands for electromagnetic field. There are artificial EMF sources and natural sources. Artificial sources would just be your microwave oven, your clock radio sitting next to your bed, your cell phone. It's amazing when we go on investigations and if we forget to turn off our cell phones and you're standing there and you have this EVP session going on, everything's really quiet, all of a sudden your EMF meter's going off, it's like, oh, wait, I got a text. The thing will go off. So you've got to turn off your cell phones or leave them out in the cars, that kind of thing. So what we'll do is we'll go through a home and do baseline readings. Okay, standing in the middle of the room, it's a 0 milligauss. But over here at the clock radio, it's 100 milligauss. So we make note of the appliance hotspots and get a reading on just the room in general. Your home should be no more ambient, as far as ambient milligauss electromagnetic field reading, shouldn't be any more than 0.1, 0.2 milligauss. Our current standards of construction and wiring should be really low. So if I walk into someone's home with an EMF detector and I'm standing in the middle of the living room and I'm seeing 4, 5, 10, 20 milligauss, that's worrisome. Because electromagnetic fields can adversely affect us. It can make you nauseous, it can make you headachy, it can make you irritable, and it's not a very fun experience. And that's why a lot of times people, when they go down into their basements, people think their basements are scary. Well, it's not that their basements are scary. A lot of people have unfinished basements. They're older with unshielded wiring and your breaker boxes are down there. And breaker boxes are notorious for giving off a ton of EMF. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, they can cause nightmares, very vivid dreams, and sleepwalking. We did have a particular case where a person kept sleepwalking at their lake house. They lived in town, never had a problem sleepwalking. They go out to the lake house, they'd sleep, and then they'd sleepwalk. Almost walked through and broke the sliding glass door one night. And it turns out the EMF was so high, right where his head would lay on the pillow, because an entrance cable to the house came in right by his head. It was not properly grounded or shielded. It wasn't up to code. So the EMF affected him enough that he would get up and sleepwalk. And they moved the bed, quit sleepwalking.
And
Yeah.
we had another investigation in Atlanta where this couple was swearing up and down that all this stuff was happening. Things were going crazy, lights turning on and off, and they were seeing and hearing things. And then we came in, and at some of the light switches, and even at their breaker box and in their kitchen, we were getting hits of 50 plus milligauss, which is huge. That's really big, especially when, like Heather was saying, it should be no more than, at the max, sometimes a spike can be like 3, 4 milligauss. So we're getting like 50, 40, 50, stuff like that. That can cause a lot of issues and cause you to hallucinate, hear things, or even it turns out with their lights flickering, they had just had their kitchen redone. Well, I told them I came from a construction background. I flat out told them, I was like, the guy wired your kitchen wrong. This is what's going on with your kitchen.
It can even cause skin rashes if you're hypersensitive to it. I mean, EMF, it can be really bad.
At that same investigation in the kitchen, it was like the refrigerator, the microwave, the oven. It's almost like it's creating a fear cage where you got all this EMF, and the lady she kept cook a lot, so it was affecting her the most.
Yeah. And it's okay if you lay the EMF detector right on the microwave and it's telling you 100. But what you don't want is to stand in the middle of the kitchen and have that coming out to where you're moving and working in your living space. And that's why when we check clock radios give off a ton of EMF. And people always set those by their beds. Well, that's why you'll see us do baselines, check the clock radio, lay the EMF detector on the pillow. Where your head is, we want to make sure that's a 0 and not getting bleed off from, the clock radio. And so what we're looking for when we do our baselines, we make sure the room in general, we get a baseline reading on the room, 0.1.2. Then when we're doing our investigations, we know where to sit away from any electronic hotspots. And if we see spikes in the electromagnetic field, then we know that something paranormal could be happening. We'll still try to debunk, make sure it's not the air conditioning, the heat, a ceiling fan on the other side of the house, something like that. And if we can't explain it through artificial electromagnetic field means, then we know that that could be something that was trying to manifest itself near the electromagnetic field meter. So that's why we take baselines, that's why that's so important, and that's why we're able to debunk a lot of our clients' claims. And of course the idea that if you have high EMF, not only could that be causing you to hallucinate or imagine paranormal activity, but anything that's there can feed off of that. So that's another prevailing theory. All right, I'll shut up about EMF. And, well, not quite. So these are the 3 types of meters that we use to measure EMF. Again, there's the pretty colorful K2 over there that lights up, green to yellow to orange to red, and I think it spikes at 20 milligauss in the red. So this is just a really basic electromagnetic field detector that you'll see electricians use. It just gives off a reading right there, that's 7 milligauss. And then this is a tri-field meter. This is measuring the electric field, the magnetic field, and radio. So it's measuring 3 separate things. And you can set it to measure each different item.
And this equipment is scientific equipment and equipment developed for electricians that we have adopted to use. So it's not like these were made specifically for ghost hunting.
Christina, can you hit the exit sign one more time?
Yeah.
You might have to hang on.
There it goes.
Yeah.
So it's going up. Go for it.
Okay, so what is some of our other equipment used for? Heather kind of gave you kind of a gloss over, like very basic version. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth. Voice recorders, the reason why we use these is because you've probably heard this on a lot of the ghost shows. You want to catch EVPs, which stands for electronic voice phenomena. Now the theory on this is that we go in there, as you've seen on the ghost shows, you go in there, you set it down, we sit in there and we ask a question. Is there anybody here with us today? Pause, give a long pause, and then you continue to ask questions. How old are you? Can you tell me what year it is for you? Stuff like that. Try to get a kind of a picture of things. And then we go back later and the theory is that you can go back later and you can hear stuff come through. And you'll see this happen. This is actually the most common piece of evidence that
I would wager that my digital voice recorder is probably the best piece of equipment I have in my arsenal as a paranormal investigator. If I only had one piece, I would take the digital voice recorder.
Because we have multitudes of EVPs versus video or anything else. Actually, some stuff that we're going to show you later, as far as video goes, is those are the only 2 pieces of video we have ever gotten.
3.
Oh, 3. I'm sorry, 3.
It took us 6 years to find our first piece of video evidence that we can explain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you guys ever heard anything doing that before?
Oh, you will hear some stuff in a few minutes.
Yeah, we have.
We'll go more in depth in EVP in just a minute.
Yeah. And then IR cameras Heather said this, these allow us to see in the dark. Now what IR cameras do, it's basically IR stands for infrared. So they have these infrared LEDs actually on the cameras that light up and can kind of blanket a room, and thenceforth you can see in the dark, essentially. If you stood next to the camera just in naked eye, you would see nothing, just black. If you look over at the screen, you could see everything. In our IR cameras, we have like a central video recorder that basically everything feeds into. So therefore, I can pull the video after our investigations and split it up amongst the team, and then that allows all of us to kind of review it and go over things.
That is the most boring part about doing this.
Yes.
Sitting
Yes.
in your office in broad daylight for 4 hours watching a futon, not move.
Or even on EVPs, hearing yourself have a conversation over again for a second time. That can be
Or,
amazing.
I mean, you're also sitting there asking questions to potentially nothing.
Yeah.
So that's why we always say, I had a coworker say, hey, I want to see a video of what you do. I was like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
It's so boring. We love it, but it is, to anybody outside, it would be very boring. The thermometer, like Heather said, we measure for changes in the air. We say ambient thermometer because you might have seen sometimes them use like the laser thermometer. You pull the trigger, it sends a laser, and it reads the temperature. The problem with those is it's reading the surface temperature of whatever you're pointing it at. So the important part, if we're trying to detect cold or hot spots, is you want the ambient temperature, which is basically just senses the temperature around whatever the little piece of wire that it has sticking out. Still cameras. We all use digital because especially a lot of the old film cameras, they stopped making a lot of film. You can still get it, but and it's just to basically possibly capture images of ghosts, or like we said before, just try to get a baseline of the entire house and to understand if anything moved. Our REM pod, a REM pod is basically an EMF detector. It's the same thing. It's just in a different package. It allows us to do a different thing, and it has that EMF field around that antenna. The vibe pod, as we said before, detects vibration. We've actually discovered before sometimes it can be as simple as people are hearing thumps. Well, it turns out we set down our vibe pod near where they're saying they're hearing thumps, and we're getting thumps. Well, it turns out it's a pipe thumping. So we can figure that out pretty easily. Frank's box or Shack Hack? I think there's mixed feelings about this amongst even our
like
groups.
It's very experimental. Very experimental.
The theory on this is that this device scans radio stations at a very rapid pace, and that to the point where it kind of creates a white noise. And the theory is that spirits can manipulate that to say something on the other side. The problem with these is like we said before, a lot of our other equipment was designed for electricians and they were scientific instruments. A lot of the Shack Hacks or even the Frank's boxes were designed by paranormal investigators, which is why I kind of...
They're also modified radios.
Yeah.
The Shack Hack specifically, when you snip a wire, and what it'll do is it'll race through every AM station, just like click, and it actually makes a clicking sound as you do it. And it's very like intrusive on your ears. It's very, it's very intimidating when you hear it. And you ask a question during an EVP session, and the theory is it can pick out a radio station that says the word it wants to say, and then it will project that word.
Yeah, my prevailing theory is that's a little shaky in general. And then, like he said, how it can be very kind of off-putting when you're sitting there in the room listening to it. It's the exact reason why. A lot of times if somebody's going to use a Shack Hack just for an experiment, just to do it, I tend to not be in the room because for some reason for me, it just does something to my head that I don't like. It just kind of just makes me feel odd, and I can't take it. So I step out of the room when they're used. Nothing for demons or anything like that. It just makes me feel.
It's very hard.
It's weird.
It's very hard in the senses because we will go in to a house for hours on end, and when you're doing an EVP session, it's almost like this, where it's very quiet. But when you turn on that Shack Hack and you crank up those speakers, it's all sound, like a wall of sound right at you. So it's.
And that's a piece of equipment that we only use with express permission from the client. We don't walk into somebody's house and pop out a Frank's box and go to town. We explain to the client what it is, and we ask them, would you be comfortable with us using it? If they say no, it goes back in the equipment case.
I sort of equate it to an electronic Ouija board. And like the Frank's box, the Shack Hack scans in a linear fashion. The Frank's box scans the radio stations in a random fashion. And I've heard plenty of strange things and answers, very deliberate answers, come out of some of this equipment during investigation. Is it really working? Is it just my head thinking that it's working?
Is it a coincidence?
I don't know. Is it a coincidence?
Yeah.
But their use can stir up activity. And just like a Ouija board, if you're using a Ouija board, it can make things worse. So that's why we only do it with express permission from somebody. And anything we get from this, we don't count as evidence. You know, we may tell the client that, well, when we listen to Shack Hack, this is what we heard, and let them listen to it, and they may hear something completely different. And I say probably 90% of the time, we all hear something different. But if we hear anything that we don't like, we shut it down and put it away immediately. It's just kind of our rule.
And him bringing up the Ouija board, that's why we always advise, we never ever use one in our investigations, never. And we advise clients to not use them, because even if, let's say, a Ouija board is harmless in the mind scope of things, if it's not, you don't know what you're messing with. And that's the main reason, you just don't know.
The Ouija board in and of itself is a game. It's what Parker Brothers,
Yeah.
something like that. But it's the intent and the purpose behind it. You don't have to have a Ouija board to do that kind of thing. You can put out pieces of paper in the class, you can do table tipping or whatever. It's the intent and what you want to get out of it is the issue of using a Ouija board.
And then also a flashlight, self-explanatory. You don't want to trip and twist an ankle or break a leg. So.
All right. So Jeremy was talking about the digital recorders earlier, and I had mentioned that it's my favorite piece of equipment. So this is what we do whenever we conduct EVP sessions or electronic voice phenomena. And just to kind of echo what Jeremy said, electro voice phenomena is whenever you go back and listen to an EVP session and you hear something and maybe possibly an answer to a question, maybe just a word or a disembodied sentence that your ear couldn't hear at the time, but for some reason it was picked up on your recorder. There are these classifications, 5 of them, class A, B, C, E, and G. Fairly self-explanatory. Class A is probably your best EVP. You ask a question and you get a clear response within a reasonable amount of time to the question you ask. Class B might have a little bit more white noise on top of it, but you can clearly hear that there was either a response or a word being said. Class C, the quality is a little downgraded a bit more. Again, with Class E, you might be able to hear something. And Class G, it's called Class G because it stands for garbage. So when we present evidence to a client, we don't even do anything past C. If it's A or B, and we can say, hey, I caught this, you can hear it. Hey, I caught this, can you hear it? That's what we'll present to a client. Anything Class C and under, we just don't even bother. So how do we conduct EVP sessions? This is kind of our normal protocol during the EVP session. We always begin, well, first off, we make sure everybody's recorder is on. And it doesn't matter, we don't have to synchronize them all at the same time, because what we do is we do a timestamp. We always say where we are, what time it is, and who is in the EVP session. Typically when we go on investigations, we have at minimum 3 people, at maximum 6 people, and we'll split up into groups, so two or 3, and I'll say, this is Saturday night, June 10th, so-and-so residence, I am here with Jeremy, and let's begin our EVP session. So that way, if we find something, or if we hear something disembodied, if I say, hey, Jeremy, I heard this on my recorder at this time, or at X amount of minutes and seconds, after I timestamp, do you hear it on yours? And if we both get the disembodied voice, it kind of backs up the evidence a little bit. When we go in, we always explain our intent. We do not provoke spirits. That's not what we're about. We're not Zach Bagans on Ghost Adventures. We don't walk into, what's up, bro? Come at me. Come at me, demon. Where are you, dude? Show yourself. No, here's the deal. You got to think. If you're dealing with a spirit or somebody who hasn't passed over or is just hanging around, that ghost or spirit, again, entity, whatever you want to call it, that was a person once. And you don't talk to your friends like that, do you? Well, maybe I talk to Jeremy like that sometimes. Come at me, bro. But you just want to be respectful, because what if they don't know that they're a ghost? What if they don't know they passed on? And if you just barged into somebody's house and think, whoa, why are you yelling at me in my own house? This isn't cool. So we always go in and kind of explain our intent. We're here because some people are experiencing this, and we're just here to make contact. We're not here to yell at you or curse at you. We're not here to make you leave. We just kind of want to have a conversation. And if you want to join our conversation, you're absolutely more than welcome to. We also described the equipment that we set up, and Jeremy and Heather went through a very detailed explanation of all the equipment. So when we ask questions, we start off by asking the general, what is your name? How old are you? Are you a man? Are you a woman? And what we do when we typically when we ask these questions is we leave about 5 seconds in between questions so they can have time to answer. If these spirits are energy, then they have to gather energy in order to interact with us. So that could take some time. A lot of times, I can tell you that we will start off with, just our base set of questions, and then we'll get distracted, and Clint and I will start having a conversation like, "Hey man, how was your week? What have you been up to?" Because a lot of the times that we do this investigation, even though we're friends outside of the team, we don't get a chance to hang out. So we'll start just having a conversation like, "Hey Clint, did you see the Star Wars trailer last night?"
Yes, it was awesome.
It was awesome. How many times did you watch it after?
6.
So we'll start at it. And whenever we have conversations like this, we actually tend to get better evidence of people either talking over or under us or answering the questions that we're not asking them, but we're asking each other. I don't know if it's on here. Do we have the 1966 EVP on here, Heather? No? Okay, well, I'll tell you. We were doing an investigation at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. And it was a hospital that was opened in 1966. And we were just walking up and down the halls. And somebody asked, what year was this hospital built? And I believe it was Jeremy. He went, 1960, and he hesitated because he couldn't remember the last digit of the year. And you hear in a clear whisper, 1966. So you get, and I think I have it on my iPad. If it's on here, I'll play that one for you too. But so we get answers to questions that we're asking each other, not necessarily the spirit that we're trying to talk to. Another thing we like to do is when anybody makes a noise, whether their ankle pops, like mine or my wrist just popped, but, or somebody coughs or sneezes or their stomach growls.
Loud stomach, and it's big in the team how loud it is, and my stomach is the
I swear, I've heard your stomach growl in investigations that you're not even on.
Yeah.
So, when we always want to acknowledge this. Like if I cough, then I'll say, "Oh, sorry, that was me coughing," because I don't want to mistake that for a possible EVP. I don't want to whisper something. That's also a big no-no. Is you don't whisper. If you say something, say it out loud, because you don't want that contamination on your audio. Because then you have to go back and re-question all of the potential evidence that you might have caught in your raw data. So you always want to know anytime you whisper or make a sound. So when we kind of wrap up in one location, we want to move to another room. We always end the EVP session by thanking whoever might have been there for their time. Again, you just got to really play the respectful card. My grandfather said you catch more flies with honey. So you always want to be respectful and say, "Hey, thank you for interacting with us if you were here. If you'd like, we're going in the kitchen and sitting down and asking some questions. You're more than welcome to join us." So we kind of pack up, grab our recorder, and we move on.
All right, so photographic evidence. This is my expertise. I've been a photographer for over 20 years, so I got a lot of background in this. Things that we want to keep in mind. Who here has seen orbs, the glowing balls of light, or that kind of thing in pictures that you take? Well, like we have here, nearly 100% of them are dust, or bugs, or dust, or water vapor, or bugs. Also, camera straps can get in your way. Everybody's put their finger in front of the camera strap's hanging off, it gets in front of the lens, those kind of things. Your hair, matrixing, which I'll talk about in a second, reflections, lens flare, these kind of things. If you're not sure, if we're not sure about a picture, then we always get a second opinion. We have other friends that are investigators, around the country. Craig Goss comes to mind, who's a friend of ours, who's also got a background in photography, so we kind of go back and forth on stuff. So these are some examples of photography that's not paranormal, but people thought they were. So up here, this little flash of stuff up here is really just a reflection of some light from the flash bouncing off. And then you got the little speckles that are supposed to be orbs, is what we were told they were, which is really a dust particle in the air. And the way that happens is when you use your camera flash, that flash bounces off of things, and dust is a physical piece of material. And that light from the flash will bounce off of that piece of dust and back into the camera lens and hit the film plane or the digital sensor. And because of where it is in relation to the lens, it may be really close, it will look magnified and glow. It may have a texture to it because dust is not smooth. If you look at dust under a microscope, it's very rough and spiky looking. Let's see. This one is hair. Somebody's hair here. They thought it was some spirit streaking by. This one down here is supposed to be an orb, but it's really like a moth, a bug flying around. Is the bug chart on here? Do you remember?
I don't think the bug chart's on there.
We have a chart we call the bug chart, and it's pictures of bugs flying around with the flash bouncing off of them. And some of them you can tell which kind of bug it is just by the spot that they make. But when we use that to compare with pictures that people send us. And then here, everybody walked outside. It's gotten cold lately. You walk outside, you can see your breath when you exhale. And that's what this is. This is a little bit of fog from somebody's breath. And they took a picture of it because they thought a spirit was starting to manifest in front of them. All right, this came from Waverly Hills. I took this picture, and the contrast on the screen is not all that great.
And I've got the other two, I've got the black and white and the color you've adjusted. So
Okay.
you want me to go to those right now?
I don't know. I'll see. If you can see inside this circle, there's a figure in here. So look for that, and then we'll go to the next one. This was a sanatorium for tuberculosis. Okay, next slide. So in this image, I cropped it in and zoomed in, and then I really just adjusted the brightness and the contrast. We had walked down the hall from that direction. I was in the back of the group, and for me, I like to turn around and take pictures behind us, because you never know what's following or happening. I happened to catch the shadow figure. And it's fairly large down here at the base. Then you come up here, and there's a head, and it comes down. So, at a hospital, they push people around in wheelchairs. And so what we think this is a nurse pushing someone in a wheelchair. This has been converted to full spectrum in black and white to hopefully show a little bit more contrast. The reason we think it's a nurse is it seems like her little hat here is peaked like a traditional old school nurse's hat. All right. I'll just go ahead and stand here and introduce these, I guess. So we're going to listen to, that's it. That'll be the first one we listen to.
And I've got the speakers cranked, and of course we can always play these after during the Q&A if any of you want to come up. We've got headphones we can plug in and listen to it better if you don't quite hear what's happening.
Can I set this up real quick?
Yes.
So this one was one of mine, and this was in a location in North Georgia. And what you'll hear is this is what it says, or what we think it says. But there were no questions asked. We were actually in the process of standing up and leaving one room and moving into another room. So you'll hear everybody's feet kind of shuffle and everybody kind of walking, and you'll hear this really long, drawn-out whisper.
Hang on, guys. Let me make sure I've got the volume, because I can't see. Yeah, that's the volume. Okay. Okay. Oh, where's my...
You guys hear that?
You guys hear that? Can you hear it? Can you hear it one more time?
Yeah.
That's scary.
We don't talk like that during our investigation.
All right, I'm gonna set up this next one right here. This one is local. This one's in Cherokee County. It's actually Woodstock. I can't divulge the location, other than it's in a historic home in the area. We were on the second floor investigating. We're all standing around talking, had the recorders going, and I can't remember if I said something about leaving, but this popped up. So it's like a whisper, a long kind of a sentence, and that's a pretty long one. It's pretty rare you get a sentence like that. Can I play that one more time?
Yep.
We don't whisper like that when we investigate. That's, yeah.
I don't remember this one.
Yeah,
I don't have any of
we
these.
got so many, it's hard to just play it.
And then, yeah, some of these we don't remember, and we'll hear it and then remember the situation.
That was Titanic.
Okay, yeah, we investigated the Titanic exhibit when it was at the aquarium, at the Georgia Aquarium, and
They had a lot of activity and invited us down.
It was the first time I was ever tapped on the shoulder by something that I didn't see.
Yeah, we had stuff moved. We did a live remote with Fox 5 one morning down there about 5:30 in the morning, and I was helping one of the crew guys carry in some equipment. We were the only two people in the exhibit. I set down this roll of really heavy cable on the ground. He and I walked out to get more equipment, came back in. Half that roll, about 20 feet of this roll, had been stretched out. So, I mean, it was really accurate.
do you want me to play that one again?
Yes.
So in the context of the Titanic exhibit,
Yeah. We
Yeah.
kind of understand. Okay, this one, I don't recall. Oh, that
It's like
in
the
the
singing.
middle was the, huh?
It's a tune.
Oh, okay.
This came from a house in East Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Play it one more time. That home was over 100 years old, and it sits on the battlefield where the Battle of Atlanta was fought.
Okay. And I'm the one who did these, so I don't have any context, so I was sort of guessing as to what was going on, so I apologize if the captions are wrong. But I labeled this one growl. It's really not a growl so much as like just a deep male voice making a noise. I couldn't quite figure it out, but you guys, whoever EVP is, can explain it.
I was about to say.
oh, that was Heather's stomach.
No, it's that was actually in Richmond Hill, down near Savannah.
Oh, yeah.
At a plantation home. The family that lives there is the family that originally got the deed from King George in the 1700s. The current house is built on the foundation of the original house that was built in the 1700s. And if you listen to it again, I would say this is a Class B, and it says a phrase. It says, "You know her."
I was about to say.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a really gruff male voice.
Don't be scared, guys. This is the kind of stuff we hear in broad daylight in our houses a few days later, and we're like, oh, yes!
And then you're like looking behind you.
Okay.
I'm on my cat's nose, so make sure.
Okay.
Is there anyone or any spirits here that would like to communicate with us? Why? Yeah,
Yeah, it's sort of
kind of faint.
a low, yeah, one way again.
I think that was impossible. Is there anyone or any spirits here that would like to communicate with us?
I interpreted as go with this, so again, one of you's gonna have to elaborate further.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
what
the
that is.
whole- Yeah. Or go with us, whatever that is. And then we have a
Is that then trying to talk to us?
So that was one of our founding investigators, Brett. And when we hear, I mean, that sort of sounds like him, but it's not him. And you'll hear things like that and you think, okay, I'm gonna email Brett. Did you say no? No, I did not. So that's when, because I've had mimics occur in my house, and a lot of times we'll capture evidence where it's a mimic of your own voice when you clearly didn't say that. And,
Well, and that's Brett talking after this. So
yeah,
he heard something with his ears,
yeah.
and then we actually got it with the audio with the recorder.
Yeah, so, and that's interesting when you have a mimic like that,
No. Is that then trying to talk to us?
yeah. So that's always really fascinating when that happens.
That was a place in Roswell, historic building.
So now the excitement, video evidence. So before I allow Clint to introduce this, I'm going to apologize. How many of you have seen When Harry Met Sally? You know the deli scene?
Yes.
I had one of those moments. But it was because I was excited when this happened. So I apologize.
So we're gonna have what you
This is
have?
a fair.
Yes, you're gonna have it. So I apologize. Go for it, Clint.
All right, so Old South Pittsburgh Hospital is an old abandoned hospital in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. It's just west of Chattanooga. From here, it's probably a 2.5-hour drive. It's a place that we pay to investigate. It's open to investigations. They host special events. We pay just for us to go, and it's kind of our treat. Every year, we find one really cool place to go and investigate. We pay to go there and have fun.
Because we deserve it.
That's right. Because we're volunteers. We spend all our own money to do this stuff, so we might as well have a little fun at least once. It's a great location. It's incredibly active. This video was taken in the morning. It was starting to get daylight outside. We had been there nearly 24 hours. When you go in, you're locked in for the whole time, for 24 hours.
You even sleep there with stuff going on around you.
Yes.
Ask
Yeah.
Jeremy
Yeah.
during the Q&A about his experience.
Side note, that's how Jeremy and I became BFFs. We were already friends. Like Jeremy and I went to school together at Kennesaw State, but we were already friends. But that's whenever we were like bros.
So, anyways, we're on the top floor of the structure, and we're in a hallway. Some of the team members go down the hallway. They go to close the doors. Jordan walks down the hallway, closes the door, and you see him push on it to make sure that it's latched. With the audio, you can actually hear it latch. Later in the video, we are asking questions, asking it to open a door. Actually, I think we're asking it to
We're asking
close
you
a
to
door.
close the one
Yeah,
that we're
the
sitting
doors
Across
are
the
not
hall.
right across from each other. They're kind of offset. So we closed this one, and we opened this one in hopes that if we can get one to close the door, maybe we can get it to open the door, or vice versa.
So what you're going to see is him walk back down the hall after checking the door. You'll hear us start to ask some questions. You'll hear a click. It's a pretty distinct click. And then you will start to see light spill into the hall from outside because it was starting to get daylight. So what's happening is the door is beginning to open, the light spills out into the hallway, then you can hear the door hit the wall. These are hospital doors. Hospital doors are heavy, so it takes some effort to move a hospital door. All right, let's cue it.
Never mind, embarrassing moment, but everyone should forget.
And this is a handheld Sony Handycam with night vision. Guess we could have edited this part out.
Yeah. So I just walked in the door to make sure that no one was in the room.
So there's somebody going in the room. This is the door that they'll close.
Whatever it is.
Jordan's coming out. He's closed the door. Shakes it, make sure it's closed. And what you really want to watch for, because you won't be able to see the door itself actually open, you'll watch the floor and across the hall for the light coming through the windows. And the big bright light at the end is another infrared camera. That was not an orb, that was a bug. There's another bug. Lots of bugs. That one flickering, you can even see because it's wings flapping.
Start to ask questions here in a minute.
Come on, Tammy.
Buddy, if you're here with us, you close the door down there by your teddy bears.
Where's my click?
There's the light.
That door.
That door just opened.
That door just opened. Yes! Yes! Oh my. Thank you.
Thank you.
That knob
No, the door did that. The door did that.
That knob turned. To hear it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I closed it all the way too.
Oh, my camera got it.
Can you close that door?
Yeah, no.
Man, I just opened one for you, what can you say?
But what they didn't tell you was that, what was interesting was, the whole goal was to get both of those doors open and leave them open, because we figured it would be easier to close. And Jordan had tried to open that door, and it wouldn't stay open, remember? He opened it and let go of it, and it kept wanting to close. So what I find fascinating is that, okay, fine, we'll close it and make sure it's latched and everything's good. So something turned the knob and threw it open, and it hit the wall twice, and then it continued to stay open the rest of the time that we investigated. So that's what I find interesting.
Okay, I think I'm going to set up this one. This was actually an investigation in a private home, as it says up here. And what this was is, you can see actually right here, this is our REM pod, what we told you about earlier that Jordan showed that kind of lights up and makes noise and stuff. Well, we set it in this room that was kind of used to be a kid's room that they had reported activity in the room, but then at this point it had kind of become that catch-all room for just a lot of stuff. And so we set up a camera in there and pointed it, that's actually a closet. And at this time that this video was captured, we were not in the room. Now, if anyone has ever used a video editing software at all, I use Final Cut to kind of search through and prepare our stuff to send out. When you drag your cursor, like the little mouse cursor, over a clip, it will show it in fast-paced motion, or 10 times the speed or whatever. It will show it really fast. Well, I was kind of just preparing the video, going along, and I dragged my cursor over a clip. And I just noticed, you'll see in the video, this piece go from here over to here, just all by itself.
And that took like a half an hour?
Yes. It took, 20 minutes. It took 20 minutes in real time. So this video is sped up quite a bit to be able to show this. And the table was perfectly level. There was nothing wrong with it, nothing going on. And you'll even see it start going off at the end. So just go on.
Also, there was like no AC kicking on, there was no HVAC, I think everything was on.
Well, and that REM pod's heavy, so
Yeah.
there's no audio.
And watch its relationship to that box. See, it's already starting to move in.
And you'll see me at the end. I actually come because it starts going off and it wouldn't stop. And so you'll see me come and I come in and reset it. And I had no idea it had moved at the time.
So they're starting to go off.
There's
Oh my god, you guys see that? That was handsome Jeremy.
So that's why when we watch our video evidence, yeah, you sit there and you stare at it in real time, but then you've got to go back and look at it in fast forward. You've got to accelerate it to see if there's any movement like that. Because again, that took 20 minutes. If you had just watched the video, you wouldn't have noticed it.
There's been times in locations where the client has said, this always moves, or something always moves from here, and we'll take either a piece of tape or chalk or something, and whatever object is moving from where it's moving, we'll outline it so that we can come back and put a camera on it, so we can come back later and see, did it move? Because if it's just sitting on a countertop, I don't have any reference point to see if it moved or not. So by outlining it or something, sometimes we can have a reference.
This one was also a client of ours, and this is actually their living room, and that's the door that goes into their bedroom. And one of their claims that they just keep seeing, they kept seeing shadows. And we caught this, it was literally 3.5 minutes starting into the investigation. I mean, this is like, we were lucky we were able to caught it. And what you want to look at is, this is the coffee table right here, and that's the TV over there. And right in front of the coffee table, there's a couch. You want to look from your right side to the left, and then back from left to the right. You'll see a shadow.
Nobody was in the house.
We were all in the garage, actually, getting ready to start the investigation, and Jeremy had already pressed play.
We were questioning whether it was something moving back and forth, but the thing is, there's a half wall, like right behind the couch too. So when you see the video, it kind of...
And there's no windows behind where the camera is, and
They do have dogs, but the dogs were outside. They weren't even inside.
ah, right there,
Use fast.
right to the left, and then left to right. I'll play it again. Because it's fake and it's short, and it's almost like it's a short figure walking, and then it's almost like crawling.
Yeah, it goes like small, gets big, and big gets small.
So this was caught at a client's house, and after this investigation, the client actually became a trainee on our team.
It still is, so.
Yeah. Now he's a full member.
Right to left. Left to right. So yeah, it is fast. It's, when she caught it, and she's sending out mad text messages, all this emails, and I'm like, why is my phone blowing up? And she's like, watch this, and I watched it, and my kids were standing next to me, and all 3 kids and I all jumped up in the air and went, yes!
Yeah, I mean, it's been 8.5 years. We've got 3 pieces of video evidence, and we do this roughly twice a month. That we go out and investigate it. You know, sometimes less, sometimes more.
So a lot of the questions we get whenever we do investigations is, or if you feel like you need to have your home investigated. First off, we all have cards if you need to have your home investigated.
We have business cards, so we'll
Yeah.
keep it on.
But if you think you need to have your house investigated, you should definitely hop on the internet and do research. Google is a very useful tool when researching paranormal groups. You always want to look for a very reputable team. What makes a reputable team? Well, they will never charge any money. This is a hobby for us. It's something that we like to do, but when you put it on paper, it's still a hobby. We're all self-funded. If you want somebody who will actually take the time and put the care into getting the answers you want, they will never charge you a dime.
It's more than a hobby, it's a passion for us.
Yeah.
If the group's over there charging you, most likely they're just in it for themselves to get a thrill. Look, they're just thrill seeking. They're not out to actually help people.
And to kind of piggyback off that, I always say that the term ghost hunter and paranormal investigator are 2 totally different things. When you say you're a ghost hunter, well, the second part of that phrase is hunt. You either hunt for 1 or 2 reasons: necessity or sport. I don't need a ghost for necessity or sport. Whenever I investigate as a paranormal investigator, I'm more interested in inquiry. I'm more interested in the questions. And anybody who is in a reputable team will call themselves a paranormal investigator as opposed to a ghost hunter. They also accommodate your schedule and wishes. It's your home that they're coming to investigate. So if you're only available on a Thursday at 11 a.m., then they should make themselves available at Thursday at 11 a.m. Provide references when asked. Like if you're not comfortable, think about it, you're asking somebody who you don't know to come into your home and investigate. You don't know who those people are. So it's not frowned upon to ask for references. And as a matter of fact, a lot of paranormal investigators' websites will actually have testimonies posted. So and so helped me with this. I highly recommend them, etc., etc. After everything is collected, as far as like evidence and a final report, that's turned over to the client, and that is the client's information. If we actually have forms that say, hey, would you mind if we use this piece of evidence, or if we find any evidence, can we use it for potential, like tonight, whenever you heard all of the EVPs, we actually had clients say, yeah, it's okay if you use this for lectures, but I just don't want my personal information given out. So at the end of the day, and when we have a final report, everything is the client's. That is, what they want to do with it is up to them.
And if you, like for example, the video of the REM pod moving, that client comes back in 3 or 4 years and says, would you please take that off of YouTube?
It's off.
Yes,
Absolutely.
because that's not our evidence. That's, you own that.
A reputable team will also never harass you for an investigation. Say you live in a historic home that is notorious for activity. If somebody's knocking on your door to investigate, they're not really in it to help the field or the client. They're in there to help themselves. And I kind of hinted this earlier. They never promote during investigations. It's just poor taste. It's rude. It looks bad on you, and you definitely don't want that getting back around if you do that. Or you as in the investigator. Never use divination, Ouija boards, ceremonial magic, or during the investigations. That should be a given for any scientific team. This will never occur. There are teams that employ or have different, mentalities when investigating the paranormal, who take more of a metaphysical view as opposed to a scientific view. And that's where you really have to look out for this bullet point right here. You always want to prepare a final report for your client. Whenever you do an investigation, you have hours upon hours of raw audio data and raw video data, and it can take a while to compile. It's probably about, a 4-week turnaround for us?
Just because, we all have jobs and kids
Yeah.
and stuff
I
like
mean,
that.
I go to school full time and I work 2 jobs,
Yeah.
so it takes a long time for us to go through this stuff. But once everything is said and done, and whether you do have evidence or you don't have evidence, you always want a final report to hand to the client. You want to give them something tangible to say, we were here at this date, we did find something, and here's all the evidence, or we didn't find anything, and we're sorry, but this is why we think you don't have any activity. Respect you and your home. We try to leave the place as untouched as possible. Sometimes when we're on investigations, they can last 5-6 hours, and we do get a little bit peckish, and sometimes we have snacks that we bring. But we always throw the trash in our cars. We never throw away anything in the client's house. If we have to move something in the client's house to get a certain camera spot or camera shot, we always make sure to put back what we move. You want a team that's going to be respectful of you and your property.
All right, so if you're interested in becoming an investigator, and I assume that some of you are, and that's why you're here, here's some things that you should look for. So when you're looking to join a team, avoid teams that practice these types of activities, that they charge for investigations. That's something that we keep hitting on. They're thrill seekers if they're charging. They allow untrained investigators to attend a private investigation for money. We will not take anybody on an investigation with us and take their money and bring them into a private person's home. We don't set up special events where we invite people and have them pay us to go in. We're not here to make money. We're here to investigate and help people and look for answers. They require a paranormal investigator certification. Now, there are people out there on the internet who have come up with certifications that will take your money and give you a piece of paper that says you know how to be an investigator. There's really no such thing. You cannot really be certified as an investigator. There is no governing body for paranormal investigators to certify you. Now, there are people that have degrees, masters and doctorates in parapsychology. That's
something completely
It's
different.
completely
Like, that's
different.
academia.
That's academia. Yeah. They accept minors as members. No, I'm sorry. You guys probably be great investigators one day. I'm glad you guys are here to learn. But unless you're 18, you can't go with us. We even have a friend of our team who's an investigator who took her son, he was 14 years old, on an investigation, and he was attacked by an entity and ended up having an exorcism. They use divination, Ouija boards, ceremonial magic. That's just pretty bad juju kind of for most folks. Depends on your belief system and your religion and that kind of thing. But really, we're here for the science. And that's, maybe if that's your thing and you're into that, but real investigative teams that are searching for science are not going to be doing Ouija boards and such.
Also, one more that I forgot on my slide. I'm sorry, one.
Go right ahead.
I'm gonna. If you are looking to have a team investigate, always check out their website. If they have a very professional website, this is one that gets me really bad, and it just makes me angry every time I see it. If you go to a website and a team has a very professional looking blog or website, that's a safe bet. But if you go to a website and their logo is this really is dripping blood and there's heavy metal music playing behind it, it happens more often than you think.
You should be suspect of them.
Yeah, you should be suspect if they're playing some kind of creepy music or there's pictures of skeletons everywhere, and be wary of that. They're more in it for the show than they are for the scientific inquiry. And also, this one gets me personally. Heather makes fun of me all the time.
Rhode Island Paranormal.
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of whenever teams try to make a name, like they take a word that is associated with the paranormal, like ghost, for example, and then they turn that into an acronym, and they're the Ghost Hunters of Southern Texas. Like, that just looks really cheap and just really bad. So, any kind of like parlor tricks to go, oh, that's neat, that's clever, that's usually a red flag for me. So.
Thanks for coming.